Hello and welcome. My name is Alice Scott, and I'm a student reporter with PBS Student Reporting Labs from McCallum High School in Austin, Texas. Today, I'm speaking with Art Shanks, grant coordinator for the Movember Funded Program, Making Connections. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Mr. Shanks.
Thank you so much for having me, Alice.
Making Connections, a national Movember project, concentrates on creating a space for men and boys to connect with one another. Why is it so important for adults and youth to connect when it comes to mental health?
There's so much stigma that blocks people from getting help that they need. And it's really important for us to take the time to connect in authentic ways in order to get around that stigma, to work through that stigma for a lot of people. We find that there are so many oppressive systems in this world that, again, keep people from having their full worth, their full sense of worth. And we find that connection is one of the things that actually allows us to recover that worth.
What advice do you have for adults who are looking to connect with the youth and discuss mental health?
The most important thing that I would tell any adult that's interested in talking about mental health with youth, or really anything with youth, is just to be yourself, be authentic. You really can't connect in a meaningful way with anyone else if you're not willing to be yourself and really understand who you are and what's going on with you. And by being yourself, it opens the door for others to be themselves.
Sometimes young people like myself are hesitant to talk about mental health, but it's important for us to be able to reach out to adults. What tips can you give to youth on being able to connect with adults and discuss how they're feeling?
Yeah, I think the big thing is understanding whether or not you feel safe. It's absolutely okay if you do not feel safe connecting with a specific adult to ask to connect with another. I know that a lot of people have negative experiences with sometimes a therapist, and that's okay. There are tons of us. There are tons of us, and it's really important that we don't allow one bad experience to prevent us from getting the help that we need. Trust your feelings, trust your gut, and get what you need.
Your program specifically works with helping men and boys to come together. Can you tell us why this group often struggles at making connections and offer advice to make conversation around mental health easier for this population?
Yeah, there's so many different things that work against these populations getting the help that they need, getting the connection that they need. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is immediately stigma. We were talking about stigma earlier. People do not want to be seen as crazy or as weak or as many other different negative insults that are often said to people who are getting help. I think the other really important thing that we have to understand is that a lot of these spaces just don't exist for people to connect. And again, that authentic way that they can be themselves, they can feel safe, they can really talk about what's burdening them, and they can, again, just get real help. A lot of times we have to put on that happy face or put on the mask that others want to see. And again, that prevents us from getting what we need.
And how do you work to break down that stigma in your job?
Great question. I think the very most important thing for me, again, is modeling. I want to be authentic with everyone that's around me. I want them to know my struggles. I want them to feel comfortable sharing their struggles. I want them to, again, know that it's a safe space to talk about whatever is going on with them, knowing that, again, if they're talking with Art or anyone else on our team, that team member is just as safe as anyone else in our program, that whatever's said by them stays within our program, and that they're going to get help that they need.
Can you share some common societal views around mental health and how they affect the men and boys that you work with?
Yeah, gosh, so many times we hear things like boys don't cry, men don't cry. And then men and boys don't feel comfortable talking about things that are causing them sadness. That sadness will have to eventually come out in some way, shape, or form. And unfortunately, a lot of times it comes out sideways and in emotions that are societally acceptable, such as anger. Other things, again, men don't go to therapists. That's something that women do. Again, that is something that forces men in a box, forces them to not get the help that they need, and candidly makes a lot of men mentally unwell.
What other barriers did these communities face?
So some of these things are pretty obvious. So again, we talk about stigma, but some of the bigger barriers are actually just logistics. It's kind of hard to go to therapy if there's no therapist that's in your area. Teletherapy has done a great job of bridging some of that gap, but it still exists. If you don't have internet access consistently, if you don't have a reliable phone connection, it's pretty hard to see a therapist. Again, if you can't access public transportation, you're dependent on a car or vehicle to get to services. And again, that's if those services exist in your area. A lot of times those services don't get well funded. So it's pretty hard to stay in existence. Other things, again, when you're talking about a city like ours, the gang lines, which make it very dangerous for people to cross if they don't know people on both sides. Even if you can technically afford to pay for therapy, or if you have the insurance that'll pay for therapy, you still might have to take time off work to do it, which again makes it not really reachable. You might have other family obligations. And again, stigma. Your family might not understand. They might discourage you from getting treatment. Friends might do the same. They might encourage you to engage in unhealthy coping strategies that they are more aware of.
What misconceptions about mental health do you most often face in your work?
The big thing is that happy equals mentally healthy. I cannot tell you how many times I hear people just talk about them wanting to be happy and how happy is good and how any other emotion is bad. And if we're being honest with ourselves, every single emotion is okay. They all have their space. They all have their time. They all have their function. And it's really important that we allow ourselves to feel the full spectrum of our emotions. It's really great for our well-being.
And how do you encourage the people you work with to feel all of those feelings?
So we do emotional check-ins where we actually talk about things that make us sad, where we talk about things that make us angry, where we talk about things that make us afraid. We have a major emphasis on labeling feelings, on making sure that we're able to talk about feelings. And even when someone isn't able to identify a feeling that they personally have, we'll ask about them having a relationship with somebody else that does have that feeling. For our specific population, men and boys, a lot of them have a hard time talking about what makes them afraid. So what we'll do, instead of asking them what makes them personally afraid for their safety, we ask them about what would make them afraid for the safety of a loved one. And that allows them to talk about it because it's not them that's the focus of attention there.
And what do you think is the greatest value of the Making Connections program?
Beyond a doubt, it is absolutely just restoring dignity and people. And what happens when people are able to come together to be themselves, they're able to understand that they, as an individual, have worth, that they have value, and that, again, they are deserving of connection with other people, that they are deserving of being treated well, that their community deserves to be treated well, and that only happens through relationships.
And can you think of a specific example?
Yeah, I can think of a young man that worked with us. I can't say too much about him detail wise, but I will say that he comes from a neighborhood with a lot of gang activity, pushed himself away from connection with others, though he did come to our program for quite some time. I think that one of the great things was that eventually he was able to recognize that him pushing himself away from others was a coping strategy that wasn't necessarily working too well for him. He opened himself up for connection, and he started talking about some of the hard things that he was going through. He talked about some of the violence that he was facing. He talked about loss in his life, and it allowed him to grow closer to the group, and it allowed him to be supported by the group. And ultimately, it allows him to feel more at home and more himself. And it might sound minor, but now he connects intentionally. He doesn't try to avoid things.
What do you consider the most rewarding part of your job as the grant coordinator for Making Connections?
That is a hard question. I would say just being able to see the transformation of men and boys. It takes time. It takes a lot of investment, and not just money, but like time, energy, effort, and skills. And a lot of times we won't see progress for several months at the earliest. Sometimes it could take more than a year. But when we see kids open up and talk about their emotions without our prompting them, when they're able to say, "Hey, this happened and I was really sad," or "Hey, this happened and I was really afraid," which again is not normal for the people that we work with. Normally, it's not normal for, if we're being honest, adults in the United States. That says something. That says that connection is something that they value. It says that they're open to their full feelings, and it says that they're going to be okay.
And how do you help facilitate these connections?
So what we do is we engage in sports and play after we make sure that our mentors are well versed on trauma and the effects of trauma and on various mental health aspects. But what we do is we have them engage in sports and play that the kids actually want to do. So if the kids want to play basketball, we're playing basketball. And if there's ever anything that interrupts, maybe there's a blow up, we're willing to process that with our kids and our mentors all at the same time. We're playing soccer if they want to play soccer. We're playing football if they want to play football. We're playing Uno if they want to play Uno. And in this virtual world, we're playing Fortnite if they want to play Fortnite.
And how do you think these activities benefit the youth you work with?
So I think that for the adults that engage with the youth, I think that allows them to understand that they're not as old as they think, which gives them a little more vitality, a little more willingness to put themselves out there to connect with other youth. For the youth, I think it's great because it again shows that they matter to adults, that they're worthwhile, and also it gives them the feeling that they're good at something. It allows them to grow at a sport a lot of times that they don't necessarily have an expertise at, but the mentor does. And it allows them to feel proud of their accomplishments. And if it's the video game, they get to feel proud that they're just putting a whooping on all of us.
And how do you think this improves their mental health or helps them with those struggles that they're facing?
It gives them real life examples of succeeding and failing. And it also, again, just allows them to connect with people in a meaningful way in real time. It's easy to be mentally well when everything's going right? But when someone trips you in the middle of a basketball game, you might have an outburst. And it's good to be able to have people there that care about you, that are willing to process that with you.
And what message do you think people should know regarding the mental health of boys and men, specifically the ones you work with?
I think that it's really important that people understand that there are a lot of systems in our society that prevent men and boys of color from getting the support that they need. I think that it's important for people to understand that a lot of these systems deprive men, boys, women, girls of their value and of their sense of worth. And I think that it's important that we understand, again, that connection is one of those things that improves the feelings of self-worth. And that if we're not willing to take the time to really invest in our people, if we're not willing to take the time to tell each other that we matter in an authentic way, then we're going to be stuck with a lot of the same results that we've been getting, which is more and more splintering and more pain.
How do you and others at Making Connections help fight these barriers?
Again, one step at a time. We like to do things on an individual level and on a macro level. So what we'll do is we'll work with young people to help them develop their sense of self-worth, to help them develop coping strategies. And then we'll also work with community partners to establish relationships that will allow for us to get those young people involved with other programs, to get involved with other working opportunities, to be known by different systems that could hurt them if they're unknown, like police officers, for example. We want relationships to exist across the board to protect our guys.
And what sort of coping strategies do you offer or suggest?
We do a lot of mindfulness activities. We think they're really important just because they're allowing people to do a scan and understand where they're really at. We really suggest that people slow down and again, try to understand what's going on with them before they act. A lot of times as men, we're not allowed to have the space to feel sad. So we'll lash out in anger. But if we're able to take a moment, reflect, and realize, hey, I'm actually sad right now, not angry, I can get the support that I need in that moment.
And what do you think is the largest benefit of the connections formed from this program?
I think that we do a great job of building connections that allow us to break stigma, that allow people to have more flexibility in who they can be on a daily basis and ultimately who they can be in their life.
So, is there anything else you'd like to share?
I would want people to know that even if they're going through hard times, even if they're facing traumas, that there are people, there are services that are out there for them. There are safe spaces available. And if for any reason there isn't a safe space in their community, that they can come together and create a safe space with the help of others. Um, and sometimes it only takes the efforts of a handful of people to create something that allows a lot of people to have health and restoration.
Thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you again for having me, and good luck.
Thank you.